All right, Will, okay. You really want to do this? Okay, this ain't gonna be easy. But that's okay, your life hasn't been easy. You know what doing hard shit is like. Got you. But guess what? The biggest mistakes Will Smith is making on his road to get in the best shape of his life and lose 20 pounds in 20 weeks. I'm going to be reviewing, reacting, and breaking down some of the biggest mistakes that if I was to coach him, I would do differently. And if anybody following his journey are using that as a source of inspiration, could possibly likely do some things differently in order to make the process much more efficient and less arduous and get to his goals or your goals much more efficiently. They do many things great, but I'm just going to be focusing on the things, the shortcomings and lessons and takeaways. So we got about a handful of mistakes that I see a lot of people make and that I definitely see a lot of my former and current clients make that I try and manage through coaching. So I need to do a little PSA first. Will Smith has been a huge influence on my life. Like, let's be very clear. I love Will Smith. This is not an attack or knock on any of the stuff behind it or him in one sense. In fact, I kind of wanted to use it as a learning opportunity for people to get an outside look in about how other health professionals and coaches may do these things a little bit differently, and is there a more efficient way to do this to get to our health and wellness performance goals? Yes, there is. So one, Will Smith, huge fan, right? He's been a big influence over my life, and he has shaped the character that I have now today since I was a kid. Anyway, let's get into this. Number one, the first mistake that I saw he and the team made is completely leaving their home environment to make the drastic change they wanted to make. So, wants to lose a lot of weight, a lot of body fat. In many ways though, this is actually not a mistake, because in order to fast track a goal, you can put yourselves in environments that are very effective for creating new habits, getting rid of destructive habits. This is good for a period of time, like a fighter going to a fight camp, but what it's not beneficial for is that he's gonna have to go back into his home environment in LA. The guy's not living in Dubai. When Will goes back to LA in California, will he have the ability to maintain a lot of the habits that he built in Dubai? Well, what we know about habit formation, psychology, and behavior contradicts some of this. It's extremely difficult to stick to positive habits in destructive environments. If you're trying to fight your environment every day, you're climbing an uphill battle. And so you have to exert a lot of willpower. And willpower is really a waste of energy. In fact, you want discipline, good systems, and a smart environment. Now, if you change your environment or find a new one, then you can form more constructive habits that support the person you want to be. Now you're running downhill instead of uphill. You're having momentum on your side. But the fact of the matter is, we have no idea. If you leave your state, you do all these amazing habits, and then you come back to your old environment, well, what makes you think you're going to be able to do what you were doing when the cues associated with those really good habits you were doing when you went to Dubai, Will, those habits that you were doing and their associated cues are no longer present, if at all, to anywhere near the extent to which they will be in LA, in your home. So what's going to happen is a lot of those habits are likely to fall short. And you're going to wonder, man, I was so disciplined and I felt like my best self over in Dubai or wherever you're going as an individual, whoever was watching this. And then when I come home, I can't. It's like I slip back, like an addict slip backs into their old habits if they do not change their environment and their circle around them and the cues associated with those old behaviors. So one of the best things he could have done is, no, screw what would have been harder, less kind of nice for the cameras, but what would have been a lot harder, but more sustainable. If this is the idea of sustainability, which is what we want to achieve, is to be able to maintain a lot of these habits throughout our life. Not to necessarily the same extent to which you are creating the change, but you want to scale back some of those habits and then maintain them. Well, you would see, how do I change and create my environment around me so I can win? You see, many of the actions we take day to day aren't shaped by personal drive or choice, but the most obvious is our environment. They are shaped by our environment. We want to hack and shape our environment to provoke better, healthier decisions. You don't have to be the victim of your environment. You can be the architect of it. And so that is one of the biggest mistakes I saw Will and them making. And it's likely going to cultivate an outcome where Will comes back and he's unable to sustain a lot of the habits and he regresses on his health and wellness and body composition a little bit. His team ask him here,
so how are you going to fix it, Will?
How are you going to fix it, Will?
We're going to Dubai.
and the reaction is to go to Dubai, right? Because it's a place he knows he's best self in.
Dubai?
As you're about to say.
Fits my personality. It just speaks to how I see the world, how I see life. If you're gonna build a building, are you really not gonna try to build the Burj Khalifa? And I guess the best thing about Dubai is that it's 12 hours away from Los Angeles. When they're awake, I'm asleep. When they're asleep, I'm awake. It's perfect. It's like no contact, no phone calls.
It's clear why he left. In a way, you're running away from the distractions of your environment. Of course, you're going to create a lot of good change when you leave, but you have to be wary when you come back. What have you done to address your environment around you? If the health is really the number one priority, you need to make it a priority to make those distractions, eliminate them, get rid of them, or manage them more effectively. Okay, so that's number one, is environment. Okay, environment is hugely important for behavior change, and behavior change underpins all of this. This is James Clear Atomic Habits stuff. I think they should have called up James Clear from Atomic Habits, which I'm actually reviewing on my other channel, Alexander Emmanuel Sandalis, every single chapter, diving deep into it. One of the best books I've ever read on behavior change. And what you guys are going to see is that changing your life is about changing your identity and changing your habits. Anyway, moving forward. Number two is the way they determine his caloric deficit. Now, it was fine, but I think it's a mistake in the way it could have been done more effectively. Okay, let me show you an example of what I mean. So in order to hold Will accountable to figure out how many calories he should consume a day, they wanted to track him. So we're using a fitness tracker. I'll show you right now.
Yeah, actually today we put a monitoring system on him, so it'll measure exactly how many calories that he's burning on a daily basis. Okay. So if we're looking to lose a pound a week, 1 pound roughly equates to around 3,500 calories. So divided by 7, it's 500 calorie deficit a day, which is a minimal amount. Okay. Also, I'd just like to point out, it might look like Scotty's been taking notes.
Let's break that down and why that's actually not the most effective way. Ooh, 2 of me. That's crazy. Why that's not the most effective way to get to the outcome of weight loss, or rather fat loss, as we want. Okay. So number one, fitness trackers are notoriously very inaccurate at measuring energy expenditure. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a citation here. You guys can look at here. We can see accuracy in wrist-worn based measurements of heart rate and energy expenditure. No device out of all they did about half a dozen devices, your most popular recording measurement tools, and they found that no devices achieved an error in energy expenditure below 20%, meaning all of them achieved some type of error above 20% of the actual energy expenditure. We know these tools aren't accurate. They're not a valid measurements of energy expenditure. However, if you use them consistently, you can establish a baseline, and that's fine. As long as you acknowledge that they're not accurate and you're just trying to establish a baseline to make decisions off. So they can underestimate and overestimate all the way up to 60-70% per that study. The way they measure, they did the classic division of 3,500 kilocalories in a pound, which is, it's not entirely accurate, but for the sake of argument, it's rough. He did say it's approximate, which I appreciate. And he minuses 500 calories off his total energy expenditure. Now, the problem is, one, you have no idea if that's accurate. So you could spend a week or two fine tuning. Oh, I didn't lose weight. Why didn't I lose weight? Well, you're basing it off inaccurate numbers. So instead, you could just skip all of that measurement stuff. You can do your Catch-McArdle measurement, basal metabolic measurement tools. You can do all that stuff. Like, I've done it before with clients, and I like to use it as a baseline just to see how accurate that equation is for what I'm about to say now. In comparison to the most basic of basic, you want to know how much energy you need to lose a certain amount of weight or gain a certain amount of weight? Weigh yourself every day. Every day is important. Record all your food intake every day. Average out the calories for the week. How many calories per day were you consuming per week on average? So you do your total calories for the week, could be 20,000 divided by 7. You average out 7 weigh-ins for the week. You divide it by 7. We'll weigh 100 something kilos, right? You divide it by 7. You get your average. Then you wait. You keep doing that for 1 to 2 weeks. And then you see what happens. Is my weight going up? Is it going down? Or on average, is it maintaining over the coming weeks? Then you can see if you are going in the direction you want to go. Instead of trying to find the perfect number, which is likely going to be often inaccurate, your energy output needed in order to achieve a weight goal. It's a very ineffective way to look at weight loss, and we're going to talk about why energy output is really not the focus we should be thinking about at all, and energy input is where we should be spending the majority of our time. So that it doesn't matter, but it's very, very minor. People massively overestimate exercise and energy output compared to energy input and food intake. So that is what I would do differently to determine his caloric deficit. And we would look at about 0.5% to a 1% body weight loss per week. This 1 pound per week, I think, is just nice, sound, round number, but that could easily be up to 1.5 pounds. That could be 2 pounds, particularly in his earlier stages. When you have more fat mass on you, you typically lose weight or fat at a much higher rate. And the leaner you get, as you get down to the 10 to 15% body fat percentage range, you increase your risk for lean body mass losses in your caloric deficit. So that's when I would manipulate protein to be higher in the context of a deficit. That's when I would make sure he's weight training consistently, which he is, to preserve muscle, which is great. And then sleep would be on fucking point. Will, if you care about weight loss or maintaining performance, health, and longevity, then sleep is the cog that moves all the others. It's a third of our life. There's a reason for it. It wasn't a mistake. Our biology made us sleep for a third of our entire life. That's probably a little side mistake. Here's if you want like another extra mistake, probably they haven't acknowledged yet in the 3-part series that I've watched so far. Just to acknowledge, I've only watched 3 parts because only 3 parts are out right now. It's that too. So that's how I would determine the caloric deficit: 0.5 to 1% body weight loss per week, which would attenuate lean body mass losses and maximize fat loss rate. Instead of this arbitrary 1 pound per week, it is a moving target, and it should be a moving target considered as to where the person is contextually in their caloric deficit. Okay, about halfway through this, number 3 is exercising for weight loss. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking and watching. What are you talking about? How could this be a mistake? Unfortunately, this has become a way of thinking where people think more exercise. If I eat 100 calories, I can just burn off 100 calories with my run or my walk or my cycle. It's wrong. It's incorrect. It's not how metabolism works, and I understand. I used to think that though, but it doesn't matter what I used to think because what I used to think was wrong. Herman Ponce is one of the premier researchers on human metabolism, and his research he's done, it's only over the last 5 to 15 years, has begun to pioneer this paradigm shifting understanding that we have of human metabolism and biology. And so thinking more exercise is the answer to weight loss is misguided, unfortunately, and a majority of people think it's the answer. I will briefly touch on it now. I've posted about it briefly on my Instagram, and I'm going to do a lot more stuff on this, on metabolism soon. I cannot get into this because this is a half an hour discussion, understanding the biology of why this is the case. Actually, let me pull up for you my post that I just put up here. Just bear with me here because I know some of you are going to have some resistance to this idea. So let's just assume it's correct. Even if you think it's wrong, just bear with me, assume it's correct. This is the analogy that I gave on my Instagram, Strength of Saad. This big old chip is the effect your food intake has on your body composition, which is the majority. It's huge, right? It is the thing. Now, the effect exercise has on your body composition is this little digger that's trying to get the the ship, from being stuck. Okay. It's going to take a long time, and it's not no effect, but it's massively overestimated how much we believe exercise affects total daily average energy expenditure and weight loss. Very careful with my words there. That's what I'm talking about. There are outliers and there are exceptions, but for the average person who is doing the average amount of exercise, but Will Smith isn't doing the average amount of exercise. Yes, I don't think he is currently. So he may be slightly an exception to this rule to an extent when he really gets up into the high volumes and high intensity 1-2 a day exercise frequency and intensity. I believe that begins to equate to the exception to this rule. But what they noticed is, if I show you a diagram, Herman and his team, they went to go study the Hadza tribe in Tanzania, if I recall correctly. So here we have the Hadza tribe. They're doing 16,000 plus steps a day, multiple hours of physical activity a day, huge amounts of activity. And what they did is they compared the energy expenditure using doubly labeled Warded method with the most accurate total daily average energy expenditure tool that we have. And they measured these tribes. And what they found is that daily energy expenditure for Hadza men and women were the same or very similar to adults in industrialized populations who were on average sedentary. You can see represented by this graph here. Shouldn't we expect to see populations that are multiple on orders of magnitude doing more physical activity? Wouldn't we expect to see them burning thousands of calories more per day through their daily energy expenditure? I thought we would, but we don't. And this is just one study which you consider, but the whole birth of information of this book and this research really puts the pieces together of why this is the case. And this is not just one isolated finding. We can repeat these findings multiple times through multiple tribes and multiple comparisons with multiple sites of information, which is covered in this book and I will cover in future videos. So please bear with me and subscribe if you want to see that. Okay, and follow on whatever social media, blah, blah, it's all. You guys know what it is, links below. Anyway, they were similar, if not the same. Well, that must infer that there's something missing because they controlled for age, they controlled for fat mass, they controlled for height. None of it mattered. So what was going on? And what's going on is that in brief, that we believe that there may be something called the constrained daily energy expenditure model. And what this is that the human metabolism is constrained to a certain range of energy expenditure that it can output per day. Why would this be the case? Well, there's biological, evolutionary, theoretical explanations that, well, if an organism was to just keep doing more and more activity, it would require thousands more calories. It would put more of a burden on its survival. It would need to hunt and gather for goddamn the whole day in order to fuel its own survival, okay? So evolutionarily, it is counterproductive to have a linear relationship with physical activity and energy expenditure and energy intake. So that's a traditional model. And so with this model, what we see is that it's capped at around 2,500 to 3,000-ish kilocalories, and it's highly dependent on the amount of lean body mass you have, which is a main determining factor of energy expenditure. And what's more important, or what's important to consider here, is that exercise is not effective for weight loss, and why it is not the case, and this kind of gets us thinking differently about metabolism, energetics, and Will Smith doing more and more activity and climbing the Burj Khalifa and doing ice baths and doing 30,000 steps in a day, which I'll talk about in a second. More is not better. Here is why we think it is the case. This may be proven wrong in the future. I think it's unlikely because we're starting to prove wrong an old adage that was believed for decades with pretty robust, up-to-date, very modern methods of scientific metabolism analysis. As you increase the amount of energy burnt on physical activity, the energy available for other tasks is diminished. You see, people think more physical activity, more output. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, the energy available for other tasks is diminished. If we are to assume that we have a fixed budget, which is what that Hadza study infers, which is what the constrained daily energy expenditure model infers, if we have a fixed budget, approximately, right, everything is a trade-off. So instead of adding the calories you burn each day, exercise will tend to reduce the energy spent on other activities. Now, where does this go? And a lot of energy is required for the immune system, decreases that. Libido, a lot of energy is required for our reproductive system. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, a lot of this gestulation and movement, non-involuntary movement, that is reduced. Multiple lines of body systems are reduced in their energy output in order to compensate for a higher energy output through exercise. Exceptions to the rule do exist for high intensity activity, endurance athletes who are elite and Olympic level types of activity, absolutely. Like strongmen, people doing multiple hours of exercise a day. Maybe Will even teeters into this conversation, this exception a little bit, where he actually will require a considerable more amount of calories to compensate for hyper amounts of exercise. But for the average individual and for the average amount of exercise that most people do, this is applicable. This model appears to be applicable, and it excites me to no end when we think we know something and we learn something else. And I'm like so passionate about it because people think more and more. I used to think more. I get it because I have that type of psychotic A-type mentality where I have to pull myself back. And you can see Will and his trainer, the trainer tries to get him to pull back and he's not as receptive. He doesn't really seem like he really listens to his trainer that much, which is humorous, but his trainer does seem to understand some of these basic recovery practices that are important, and that more is not always better, but will is will, right? Let's go through number 4 now. Letting the scale weight influence your mood, self-esteem, and confidence. Alright, so Will gets on the scale here for his first week weigh-in after his baseline weight, and he's a pound heavy, he's half a kilo heavier. So naturally, a lot of you will step on the scale and you'll be heavy, and you'll be like, what is going on? This ain't working. You'll feel dissuaded, you'll feel disincentivized, you'll feel demotivated. As Will,
Doesn't feel right. You might need to check that.
you see on his face, he's like,
Wait on.
almost, it's probably feeling shame and embarrassment.
You can stick the scale on hard surface really good.
The gym
And
has the small
confusion.
scale, though, if we wanted to run it.
No, listen, you gotta.
But then he owns up to it. He's like, yep, this is it.
We dropped that shit in 6 weeks. That's what he's saying. He's like, he feel like I'm disrespecting his legacy. Punching in some stupid numbers into his little stupid.
One mistake people make and Will's making here is that they're only recording the weight once per week like the Biggest Loser. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is amateur hour stuff. You should be recording it every day. Why? Because your body weight can fluctuate 1 to all the way up to 3% every day. So that fluctuation, which is just probably a normal fluctuation that is a result of, let me give you like a handful of things. Hydration status, okay. What if you consume more liquids because you're in Dubai now and you're compensating for your dehydration? 2, GI contents. If you're consuming more food or less food, you're going to have more or less food in your gastrointestinal tract. This includes fiber. Fiber draws water into the GI tract. We often consume more fiber in a caloric deficit because it's more satiating. We want to be more satiated when we have less food, right? If you're going to store more fiber in your GI tract, at least transiently, you're going to transiently store more water because fiber pulls water in. Number 2, speaking of water, salt. What if you have more salt? Electrolytes also compensate for your dehydration. You're going to store a lot more water. I could get everybody to drop 1 to even 3 kilos in the next 48 hours by manipulating one or a couple of these things, particularly the next one, carbohydrates. You want to know why the keto people notice such big monumental shifts in body weight in the first 2 weeks of a low carbohydrate ketogenic carnivore diet? Not only because you're removing a lot of trigger foods and you're not getting a lot of the trigger foods that trigger symptoms and signs in you from underlying conditions you haven't addressed, but I'm talking about glycogen. I'm talking about muscle liver glycogen stores about 3 grams for every 1 gram you store. So let's say your body, by the way, the more muscle you have, the more glycogen you store, which gives you a higher cap to store more fluid and a higher reserve for glycogen, which is stored sugar. It's just a bunch of monosaccharides joined together. So you're going to store, I can manipulate half a kilo up to a kilo of water, 1.5 kilos of water even, for a couple of pounds, guys, just if I jack up or jack down glucose intake. Why isn't this being acknowledged? It could be any number of these things. And also, what are we doing only weighing you once a week? You want to get the average. Let's say you're high that week, but what if you were high on that day, but you were lower on all the other days? Well, your average is lower than whatever it was, 220. And that's good, you went down. But because you weighed only on one day, you only got one isolated figure that can be influenced by a handful of covariates. It's just, you do a study, imagine like you're doing a study on yourself and you want to control for covariates, for other variables that can decrease the quality and validity of the results that you're getting. So this is like basic stuff that I think a lot of people don't realize. Don't let the scale influence your mood, your self-esteem. That number does not define you. That number is transient. That number can be influenced by so many things that I just mentioned. And it's one day. You need to take averages and then look at how the averages go up or down per week. That is your answer to whether the shit you're doing is working or not. Not stepping on the scale once. What is this? Will Smith got an unlimited budget. He should be able to have someone who has the knowledge to tell him that. Now, I'm not discrediting any of the people and the knowledge they have. There's so many factors that can influence whether that was said or whether that was listened to or whether someone knew that or not. That's fine. But I'm just acknowledging that this is basic shit that we should be aware of if you are trying to lose weight or gain weight and care about scale weight. Second last mistake now. Focusing on stereotypical nutrition values instead of personal values. What do I mean by this? Let me show you from part 2. So Will's working with this nutritionist and he's eating some seed crackers, whatever. They're trying to demonstrate what healthy eating looks like, which I think is great.
We brought in Mona. She's a nutritionist, and also with Will's doctor, we're going to try to set up a sustainable diet that's going to be healthy, and he's going to have all the energy that he needs.
So this is guacamole seed cracker sprouts.
Seed cracker
We have to focus
sprouts.
on this idea of nourishment. How's it going to feel to nourish your body with the right food?
The nourishment is the
So when we look
focus for
down at his
Mona.
plate, we want to make sure that there is 60 to 70% of high-quality plant-based foods.
Yeah, that's fine. All right.
And
So she makes him a
good quality
shake.
fat.
Second sip, I better. Third sip.
Yeah, this is horrible. So, but
When Will Smith, says your shake is horrible on camera's probably not the best moment, but I'm sure they have a fine relationship. But that look kind of says it all to me.
It's not about taste, no.
Scotty just finished.
And then Will's like, oh, my bad, I didn't mean to offend. And acknowledges it's not about taste. But it's important. It's important factor. And I want to talk about the focus on nourishment, and that for sustainable food habits and for sustainable body composition and lifestyle changes, not many people are incentivized to do a habit just because they know it's good for them. In fact, the majority aren't. Otherwise, the majority wouldn't do destructive things that are harmful to their health. So Mona, I think she had great intentions, and this idea of nourishment is great. It infers quality, and like I value that highly as well. Like that speaks to me, nourishment. But you need to tap into the values that resonate with the individual. Even if this is the first, you don't know Will Smith, this might be the first video you've seen of Will Smith, you can tell that this guy values his reputation immensely. He values what people think of him. He values work ethic and being a high performer. Like, he resonates with that. We need to speak to that. Nourishment, I don't think Will gives a fuck about in comparison to being the highest performing, hardest working dude in the room, bad motherfucker. So I need to speak his language. And this is what I do with my clients. I got to speak your language. What values resonate with you? All right, Will. Okay. You really want to do this? Okay, this ain't going to be easy. But that's okay. Your life hasn't been easy. You know what doing hard shit is like. Got you. But guess what? Working hard is easy for you. Working smart is another thing. And so you want to fuel your car like a Ferrari, right? Well, you say whatever his favorite car is. You want to fuel a car like a Ferrari, Will? Cool. You've been fueling your car like a garbage truck, bro. I'm not going to talk to you about nourishment. In fact, I'm going to talk to you like this. All right, these motherfuckers in Hollywood, some of them think you're washed up, bro. Not me, I fucking love Will Smith. But some of them think, you're getting washed up, bro. Your movies are getting worse. You're going on YouTube now trying to, that seems to be your thing instead of making Hollywood movies. You know, that's kind of where all the celebrities go when they can't make great movies anymore. I kind of jab at him a little bit, and I'll be like, well, man, you want to be that guy again? Oh, you got to have the habits that guy had. Bad boys Will Smith on steroids. Next level. So what that means is you need to fuel your car like a Ferrari. Like that A-list Hollywood guy making blockbuster movies that you know you used to be. That means you need high performance. That means you need optimal health. Performance is a requirement, a need in order to get you across the line and do these great things and function at a high level. That means you got to put food in you that gives you great performance. These foods give you great performance. X, Y, Z, bang. I'd frame it like that. I wouldn't frame it like nourishment. Like Mona, I think a lot of her community resonate with nourishment. I don't think Will gives a fuck about nourishment in comparison to give a fuck about performance and beating out these other Hollywood actors. I'd reference The Rock. You see The Rock? You see what The Rock's doing? He's not that much younger than you. You need to get on The Rock shit, okay? He ain't treating his body like a garbage truck, and he's selling out movies like ever. He's getting better. What are you doing? That's how I'll talk to him. So Will, if anybody from his team watching, you could show him this. And you can be like, okay, there's some truth to what I'm saying. I love you, Will, but there's some truth to, like, some people think this. Like, there's probably some truth to the shit I'm saying. So most people build outcome-based habits instead of identity-based habits. You need to build identity-based habits built around the person you want to be. So who's the person you want to be? You need to be able to answer that. So we focus instead on who we want to be, who you want to be, Will, and then work backwards from there. That's it. The last mistake that Will Smith has made in his transformation to get in the best shape of his life is focusing on intensity instead of consistency. It's easy for guys like Will, for guys like me, when working hard is actually easy. I can tell that's what he knows. That's my strength. That's his strength. We can always do more. That's easy for us. I know it sounds strange to some people, but working hard actually becomes a crux when you're really good at it, because it hides you from being able to acknowledge some of the weaker points of your own character and not seeing how dumb you actually can be working. It's not just working hard, it's working smart, and it's working consistently. You don't get to see how inefficient systems can be hidden through your work ethic because you're good at being a hard worker. The reminder here is that perfection is the enemy of good. Now you might say, Will, I don't want to just be good. want to be great. Well, perfection and trying to perfect things often is the distraction. It's the trap. I want to credit to his trainer because his trainer acknowledges that recovery is important, Will's pushing too hard.
From a trainer, but you really have to keep a close eye on him in terms of pushing too hard. He, at times, can function like a racehorse in which, you know, he'll just keep going until he dies or gets injured.
So I've had clients like that. I train guys for Guinness World Record attempts. One of them just pulled a Jeep for 2-ton Jeep for 100 kilometers. Shout out to Ethan Fleming. Now, I didn't coach him through this one. But like, I know what it's like to coach those types of guys and girls. And often you have to learn how to pull them back. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, Will doesn't seem to be receptive in this time and moment to these suggestions. As you'll see here,
I went for a run.
At 3 a.m.?
At 3 a.m.
Will's laughing because he's like, he's in a zone. He went for a run at 3 a.m. He's locked in. He's in a fight camp. He will not be stopped. I get that. Respect, man. But guess what? That's easy for you, motherfucker. That's easy for you. You know how to flip that switch on. What I don't believe you know how to do is work hard, not insanely hard, but work hard, work smart, and work consistently every day. No matter where you are. Not fucking get out of shape. You know why I've never been out of shape? Because I stay in shape. Now, I'm not on the best shape. I'm not like top 0.1% walking around ripped and jacked. Give me some more time. But I stay in shape because I made a commitment to consistency over intensity. Now, Will, on the other hand, this motherfucker, go forward in the video. Trying to beat everybody.
Got over 30,000 steps, I think.
30,000 plus steps.
Just to put that in perspective, I ran a marathon with less steps than what he did yesterday.
I'm gonna get as close to death as I can tonight on the treadmill.
Close to death as I can on the treadmill. Like, what are we talking about? Best shape of your life. Yeah, you're gonna get there. What, for a week? For a day? For a month? And then you go back home and then what? How much are you gonna lose? Because this mentality, this is not your life. Right now, this is Will's life. And you can see because then his book took a step back and he didn't actually end up working on his book as much because he was hyper-focused on this. This is a great way to get in shape. It is not a great way to stay in shape. I think that really is the thing. Unfortunately, I said it too late. Most of you aren't even here. Look at this. This dude's in physical therapy now.
I've had a hamstring issue. Now I'm about to get my ass shot.
Hamstring, whatever injury, issue. I don't know. It's maybe pre-existing. Probably an acute flare-up because of the amount of volume he's doing now. And doing ice bars, martial arts with jiu-jitsu with Khabib, this dude is going balls to wall. And the focus should be on peeling back some of the intensity and focusing on consistency and working smart and establishing great habits that can be adaptable no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you go, because you travel a lot, no matter what food choices he goes, probably who knows how many unlimited food options he has and restaurants he can eat at. He'd probably get really excited. I know he enjoys food. And so, but is anybody teaching him how to make intelligent food choices when he's out at his whatever Michelin star restaurant and he can order whatever he wants and gorge on everything? Is anybody teaching him how to create sustainable habits when you go out to restaurants? And when you go eat out, and when you're at home and your family orders pizzas, like how do you manage that total caloric volume for the day so you don't end up slowly back where you started? If I was working with Will, and it's not even me, there are a few coaches out like me who can do like how I'm doing it now, right? It's just kind of timing and convenience of like, your Will Smith trainer, your celebrity trainer, a lot of shit has to go right for you to end up in that position. I'm not. That's not going to probably be my path unless someone will watch this video and is like, you know what, fuck it, let me try this guy out. But the chance of that happening is like a roll of a million-sided dice. Okay, I'm not betting on that. So if I was coaching Will, in my humble opinion, there's no way to say it, I think we could do a lot of these things more efficiently. We would focus on a lot of different things. We'd focus on behavior, habit change, identity change, and making sustainable habits so you can do this up until your 80s and 90s. So you can still make movies, bro, if you want to. If you want to be able to make movies into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, why not have the capability to? Instead of having to be like low energy, low libido, you have to sleep all day, you're sore, you're injured, like that doesn't have to be you. We can start talking about like therapies and treatments like PRP and steroids and TRT and, supplementations and looking at biochemistry and blood work and just getting to that next level. But before we get to any of that, we get to this basic stuff that we talked about in this video with the 6 mistakes that I believe Will Smith is making, getting into the best shape of his life, and how you guys may be making those same mistakes too. I think I'm going to do more of these when I see them with people that I care about, and I believe we can make a bit of a public image and get some eyeballs on videos like this to help people make better decisions for their day-to-day health and wealth and life. If you want to see more of these, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think below. What are other mistakes that you guys saw that Will and his team were making? Or what are some things they did really well that you liked that maybe inspired you? Because Will has inspired me immensely, and regardless of these mistakes, I bought his book. I'll read the shit out of it. He's been one of the most impactful people in my lives, and I would not be the person I am today without him. So Will, thank you.